Hi, everyone. My name is Ross John Fortune from GovCIO Media and Research, recording here from the Billington Cybersecurity Summit in DC. Joining me now is Dr. Darren Death, Chief Information Security Officer, Chief Privacy Officer, and Deputy Chief AI Officer at the Export-Import Bank. Welcome.
All right, thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's start with some basic stuff. Multi-cloud, like complicated environments, what kind of data are mission critical to log and to monitor and to keep tabs on for cybersecurity?
So I think one of the key things you want to be looking for across environments is everything related to identity. You want to make sure that you understand what people are doing, who they are, what they're accessing, everything from a role-based access perspective. You want to be able to tie that into, especially in, like you say, complicated cloud environments, where, especially in cloud environments, everyone's remote to a cloud environment. So we want to understand, where they're coming in from, what time they're coming in from. We want to make sure that we have an understanding of the areas they may be coming in from, basically being able to establish some basic understandings of trust. We want to understand that gives us some visibility to the controls that may be being applied depending on where they're coming in from, whether they're trusted systems, BYOD environments, things like that. The key thing is we want to be able to pull all of the information, because again, we're talking about complicated multi-cloud environments as well as on-prem environments, bringing that all into one centralized repository so that we can take all of this information about individuals, data they're accessing, what they're doing with that information and that data, and then be able to look for those things that might be indicators of where we may have malicious activity, whether it be malicious insider or external threat actors, right? So being able to bring it all in and then correlate it all together, where someone may be accessing maybe an on-prem environment, pivoting, going to a cloud environment, depending on the type of cloud environment, whether it be like a platform as a service, where it may just be infrastructure or infrastructure as a service.
So you mentioned all this data that you're getting. There is this need in getting all that data to log people and get them. You are also the Chief Privacy Officer. You wear many hats. How do you balance that need for privacy for your users and for the data against the need for people to have access?
Right. So I think one of the key things, and it's an old point at this point, but I think people still struggle with it, is shifting left. Right. So I think whether it be cybersecurity, privacy, even I'm sure we'll talk about AI at some point, but getting to where the requirements are shifted left in the development process is usually going to satisfy a lot of the concerns, right? I think when you see when privacy requirements and cybersecurity requirements end up having to become these negotiable requirements where we're trying to figure out how to satisfy them, it's usually because they're not properly built in from a SDLC perspective. You don't at project initiation, you aren't having the conversations about what's feasible and what's possible within the environment. What are the different kinds of things we can do to satisfy requirements? When you actually start getting to building solutions, those requirements aren't there. So the designers that are building the infrastructure and the software, they don't have the requirements there to make the proper decisions, right? And then what ends up happening is when you start getting into your quality and your test parts of your SDLC, you start finding that you're having issues, right? Or when you come in to test, you find that a control is not in place, and then you're not able to actually satisfy that requirement. So I think the key thing there is a lot of times the cybersecurity, the privacy, and the usability conversation is really kind of a misfire on good project and program management. Really, the key way of balancing that is having the great conversations at the beginning with business leaders and mission leaders, making sure that the requirements are built in, that you've got the mission and business leaders buy off on the fact that it's important to maintain privacy, and cybersecurity requirements are essential and functional requirements for any application or system, and then kind of driving that through all the way to implementation.
To that end, what do the conversations look like when you're talking to certainly financial institutions and business leaders that you mentioned? Like, is that the kind of thing they're on board for? Does it help? How do those conversations go? I guess is my point.
Yeah. So I think the key thing to focus on is those conversations are really very focused on. So when you go into those, you're not talking about firewalls. You're not talking about IPSs or web application firewalls protecting software. What you're really talking about is the mission in business. You really want to have a conversation around what is it that they're actually trying to achieve with the system that they're building, and then talk about the importance of protecting that information. When you're talking about privacy and ensuring that data is protected within these systems, you're going through processes like information categorization. You're going through PIAs, PTAs, privacy impact assessments, and privacy threshold assessments, and trying to determine with the business, what is the data that they're actually going to be using, and how do we have to protect it. And then when you're having those conversations with those leaders, you're just simply talking about, at the end of the day, these systems exist to support the mission. And if remember, there's confidentiality, integrity, and availability on the cybersecurity side. We're worried about all those things, right? So if we aren't putting in the controls that are going to be necessary that those leaders need to support, then we may have outages because of inappropriately put controls. We may have data leakages. Systems may become unavailable. Data might be changed, right? So certainly from a privacy perspective, we need to make sure that information stays correct. It can't just be changed. And I think that when we have those conversations with the business leaders, they really understand that. Because at the end of the day, good business leaders, they're great program managers, right? That's why they're there, right? So, and they're risk managers. That's what they're doing as business leaders. They're ultimately managing risk on their mission. And I think when you bring these technology conversations and just bring this to them as another programmatic risk conversation, then they get it, and then they're able to talk with the technology leaders and make sure that these requirements are being built into their environments.
I want to get to the AI conversation because that's always very fruitful at this point. AI does the things that are tedious and dangerous. That's one of my favorite quotes, is having spoken to the former DON CIO. That's what she always said was, AI is really good for tedious and dangerous. How are you using AI in cybersecurity, in logging, for the things that are tedious and or dangerous?
Certainly AI is built into many of our tools. And I think when people are talking about AI right now, a lot of times they're talking about generative AI, large language models. But I think it's really important to remember that we've been using AI for a long time. Machine learning qualifies, right? It is AI. AI is actually a large area of study. So when we're talking about the correlation that's going on in SIEMs, when we're talking about endpoint detection and response tools, user behavior analytic tools, these tools are all using machine learning algorithms and are absolutely being leveraged to understand whether or not potentially bad actions may be happening in the environment. Interestingly enough, one of the things that we're using AI for in our environment, which is new for us, but very simple, using generative AI to perform our incident response testing. Rather than just kind of going through kind of a hand scripted process, we're actually using generative AI to lead our teams through what an actual scenario may be, and actually go through multiple rounds of essentially escalating badness, where the threat actor is coming in. It could be attacking any part of our organization. It could be using multiple attack vectors, and essentially the teams have to come up with plausible responses that where they would take those actions. Our use of generative AI takes into account other things like the fact that other people may hear that there's an incident happening as part of the testing, of course. And how do you respond to that? How do you respond to having external communications and things like that? So I think it's like a excellent use of kind of the kind of generative AI to lead through testing.
So I know a lot of the conversation around AI and AI tools, there is this cultural shift. I know Mark Gorak and Kelly Fletcher talked about that this week here at Billington, about how getting people to adopt AI, because it feels like cheating. People will say, where are you working on that, and what kind of work are you doing toward that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we're EXIM is getting ready to partner with ACT-IAC, the American Council for Technology Industry Advisory Council, specifically their emerging technology COI, we're going to be starting a project around what's called a artificial intelligence community of interest. So essentially what we're going to be doing is working with them initially to come up with the kind of the thought leadership around what does it take for an organization. In our case, it'll be, public sector, but regardless, what does an organization need to do to increase the adoption of AI within their organization, specifically focused around kind of the generative AI productivity. The bottom line is that, that's a huge area, huge use case where people just need to take advantage of it just to multiply the amount of work that they're able to do in a single day. And unpublished numbers, but the numbers that I hear is out of an organization that has a complete implementation of those generative AI productivity tools in their organization, maybe only 30% of the group of users actually takes advantage of the tools, and for all different reasons, right? And that's part of what this study is going to do, is kind of go through like what are the reasons. Like some people are scared, right? They've seen Terminator and they don't want to be part of it. Some people are feel like they're cheating, and are concerned about that. Certainly using these tools, you're responsible for the output of the tool. So some people think, if I've got to review the work, then I might as well do it myself. So there's all kinds of reasons, right? So the project's gonna work through the reasons, and then once we complete that, a team's gonna come together, and then we're gonna use this research within EXIM to build out our own AI COI, and then really push the adoption of generative AI tools within our organization. Specifically for the reason I mentioned. There's just such a great opportunity to increase the productivity of individuals. Really the goal here is just to make sure that every user in EXIM has an AI assistant that can be there to multiply their effort.
Yeah, I know that's always the talk when it comes to AI is it's not going to come for your jobs. To reference the Skynet Terminator conversation, it's not going to take over, certainly not anytime in the immediate, but it is a way to sort of help you. It's a tool just like any other. Well, thank you so much for being there.
All right, thank you so much.
CyberCast, along with GovCast and HealthCast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com.